The world has changed in sales. If you're an accountant and all you do is bean counting, that's not enough anymore.
Yeah.
Not enough. So as a salesperson, you teach yourself, okay, here's my core business. And of course, I have to do that. However, what else? If somebody says to you, I need to get something, well, you go, wait a minute, who do I know that can supply that? Everybody wins.
This is the Storytelling for Sales podcast, a show about leveraging the power of storytelling to ignite your sales performance and grow your business.
Well, hello and welcome back. I'm your host, Ed Bilat, and it's great to have you back. Listen, I've been reading this well-known book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And although this book been written 30 years ago, it's very, very relevant to what's happening today. In this book, Stephen talks about the fear and vulnerability. And let's face it, a lot of people are very, very vulnerable today. They fear about their jobs, they fear about the future, they fear about the workplace, and as a result, they're trying to be more and more independent, okay? So I only gonna care about me and mine. This is my job, this is what I do, and this is it. And don't get me wrong, that independence is very important and even vital. However, we live in the interdependent society. We depend on each other, okay? And this is especially true in sales and especially true during COVID-19 situation. So I decided to go out and actually have met a very interesting person, Milan Topolovec, who is the president and CEO of TK Financial Group and in Orbis Group. And we had this wonderful conversation about sales, financial industry, and of course the power of stories. But what struck me the most is his approach. He has a very interesting strategy on building the business and acquiring and keeping new clients. So the conversation went so well that I actually invited Milan to come to our show today and talk about his secret strategy, which is an interdependent skill, by the way. Milan Topolovec, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed.
Well, so I was so happy to meet with you last week. We actually met at your office, and even we were wearing masks, it was still a great conversation. So it was absolutely fascinating by your stories, knowledge of the financial industry, but most importantly, the drive, the passion to help businesses during these unprecedented times. So for our podcast today, I was thinking why don't we just go and revisit our conversation through the lens of COVID-19 and then kind of try to give overall picture of what's happening. How do you see the world? But before we do this, let me ask you our traditional question, which is, what type of business success story inspires you and why?
One of them is Steve Jobs, and people go, well, it's probably because of the Apple. I have an Apple iPad, I have an Apple. No, it's not because of that. In business, people sometimes that are brand new, they think it's like a hockey stick.
Mm-hmm.
You start the business, you grow, 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 grow. It's the furthest from the truth, the ups and downs. And he basically succeeded. He got knocked down, didn't stop. He was human. Humility to say, hey, man, I made a mistake here, okay? And came back to fight another day. And thank God he did, because look at the products that we've gotten as a result of him being able to endure.
It's certainly a fascinating biography, especially being fired from your own company, right? How do you feel being fired from your own company, which is now the most valuable company in the world, by the way?
Yeah.
Right? And then yet, in his biography, he mentioned that this is probably one of the best things that actually ever happened to him. Quite a story.
And I want to point out that he kept his ego in check. Working exclusively with business owners and professionals, obviously over the last 40 years, I've seen lots. The ones that keep their egos in check, they succeed, in my opinion, because he could have got all upset. I don't want to talk to these people. I don't want to do anything. He didn't. And that's the part that I like about him the best.
Yeah, fascinating. So thank you for sharing this. All right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about the financial industry. So, like, obviously, a lot of things to talk about, but how did you get into the financial world? Like, what, how did this happen?
Well, I was playing football for Ottawa Rough Riders, and I didn't see a career, certainly not income-wise, in the football, so I had to make a switch. I didn't watch one football game for 2 years or listen or anything just to get myself away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working with London Life, knocking on doors, literally not knowing anybody in Ottawa because I went to university here, knocking on doors, talking to people, talking to business people. And I decided early in my career that I wanted to serve three types of clients. As I mentioned to you, business owner, professional, and Jewish clients. Not being Jewish, that was a challenge. However, over time, people realized about my honesty, integrity, and knowledge. And now many of my clients are, in fact, Jewish. And the reason I chose that community is because they have a great love for their families, making sure that their families are taken care of while alive and beyond the grave.
Wow, really interesting. So it's such a switch from a professional football career because you played for 2 seasons, right?
That's right.
2 full seasons and then switch. In your biography, I see that you put that was a calculated move. How did you come up with this move? Was it like internal feeling or something else?
A guy approached me. I was referred to him, and I was still playing with the Rough Riders. I remember going to the meeting and bringing my suit. I didn't want to have the suit at the stadium, so I dressed myself inside the cubicle in the toilet at Villa Roma, a little restaurant across from the stadium. So, because I didn't want the boys asking me, hey, how come you're putting on a suit and a tie?
Yeah.
And I met the manager at the time, Bob Riche, and the rest is just history.
Okay. Coming from a professional football to professional sales. So like, I'm sure there have been some challenges. So what was the biggest challenge you have to overcome in your early days? Obviously knocking on doors.
Well, the biggest challenge is to overcome is basically the fear of knocking on doors. I overcame that quickly, but I could tell you a story. I was walking up and down Bank Street, and there was one place I didn't want to go into. And it was a men's shop. They were selling $1,000 suits 40 years ago. And I walked by this place all the way downtown, all the way back. I got in my car and I looked through the window and I saw this shop. And being a football player, my attitude was always never give up. I closed the door, went back in, and the lady says, my husband's looking for some life insurance. I almost fell off my friggin' feet.
Wow. So your biggest fear were actually your biggest opportunity in a way, right?
That's right. It's basically talking to people. COVID has really put a damper because I don't get to see people on a personal level as much as I used to, which I hate.
Yeah, like it's difficult. So obviously knocking on the doors, meeting people for the first time. Do you have a favorite sales failure of yours? Something you've done and something that could have been done better?
I guess the big part was I used to not give up on anything. It's like the book I just finished listening for the first time. We'll listen again, The Wolf of Wall Street. And what he said was, and I wish I would have known this earlier. Well, now I knew it, but it says when you're mining for gold, there's water coming down and you got the little pan, the old gold miners, and they would wait for the nuggets of gold to come in. And he said, one thing is for sure, the water will never turn to gold. Mm-hmm. So the key factor is sometimes my nature is not to give up on anything. Like one of my clients, Andy, said, you're like a dog on a bone. I don't give up on anything, especially if I know it's the right thing. And one thing I would have learned is to give up on certain situations, which now 40 years later in the business, I just finally say, I still have a hard time with it. I'm a lot more in a situation to say, listen, no, I don't want to do this, or we're not going to do business.
Yeah, like it's such a great point because very often in my sales career, like salespeople, we're so hungry for business, we're so motivated, we basically go and chase anything. I just remember a meeting with one of our VPs back in the early days, and he asked me, like, Ed, what are you focusing on? And I said, I'm focusing on anything. As a young immigrant, I will do anything. And he said, like, there is no way you can focus on everything. focus means you look at one thing, right? So
Yeah.
I remember that lesson that you cannot focus on every opportunity. You got to pick. It's a terrific point. And even if you find the opportunities, how do you know when is it time to give up or say, okay, like this is probably shouldn't be my priority?
Yeah. If you look at statistics, and you know these as well or better than I do, in order to get a client to the point where you're actually doing, might take you 6 to 8 calls.
Mm-hmm.
The average salesperson will quit after 2, maybe
Right.
2.
That's right.
So the challenge is not to be annoying,
Yeah.
but to be persistent enough. And every time you call back, you don't say, hey, have you thought about this? Because he's going to go, are you crazy? So the idea is to never give up, but there's times where you have to say, listen, doesn't matter what I do. My passion often overtakes me, because if I know I'm doing something for you that is the right thing, and you don't see it necessarily right off the bat, it can be frustrating, because I'm going, how come? What am I doing wrong that I'm not able to convey to him or her what they should be doing? Knowing when to say, okay, that's enough. This is not going anywhere, or not going anywhere today, maybe 6 months down the road.
Yeah, another great point. So what you're saying is, as long as you're keeping the right attitude of actually helping them, that you can't really go wrong. So it's not about the pushing the product, it's about helping them to keep their own customers.
It's not about the sale, it's about the result. So to me, is biggest regrets I have in business is that I wasn't able to convince somebody to do what they should have done. Let's say it's an insurance and they had a heart attack. I've had situations where I'm trying to get the client to buy a policy and he can afford it. There's no issue. Goes on a trip, has a heart attack. He was buying $1 million policy on critical illness. He would have got $1 million check. Those are the ones that I remember the most, and saying to myself, what else? What else could I have done to convince this person to do the right thing for themselves? And that's a hard part to accept. That's not your fault.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's great. And I certainly read the testimonials on your LinkedIn page. So one of them, I think from David Perry, was actually thanking you because he did have a heart attack. And he said, if not for Milan, we would never be able to survive actually this. That's what really, really touched me.
Yeah, he had a health condition and he was not even my client.
Yeah.
He's not my client. I get law firms that call me to help them settle claims.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you position yourself sort of as a quarterback. Can you explain the role of the quarterback? Because usually it's like that. So we sell insurance, this is it. But your description is very different. What do you do as a quarterback? Obviously from a football analogy and your background, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I do typically is I may get involved in certain areas. So what I've done is learned or taught myself or taken a million courses. I know legal, I know accounting, I know banking, I know insurance, I know investments. I know enough to recognize that there are issues. So a client will come to me and say, Milan, I want to set up my estate. I'll say, who's your accountant? Who's your lawyer? Well, my accountant is this person. Okay. Are you comfortable with them? Are they good? Yeah, I'm comfortable. Who's your lawyer? And they'll say it's this person. And I know who the person is. And I said, well, they're a really good lawyer. They said, they're good for this stuff. I'd like somebody else. So this is a real case situation. I bring in the other person. So the idea is to bring everybody to the same table, your advisors. Mm-hmm. Often business owners, and I used to do this as well, make decisions in silos. Mm-hmm. Your wills, your shareholder agreement, your power of attorney. So you set up a shareholder agreement and I go into situations and they don't have a will. And you go, are you kidding me? If you get hit by a truck, who makes business decisions for you? So often to be able to do this, you have to have the people skill. Like I say to people, sometimes I'm a rabbi, I'm a priest, I'm a sex counselor, I'm whatever. Because those are the positions that the clients will say, Milan, I'm thinking of doing something. And it's got nothing to do with financial world, but it's about the people. People know me as also as a connector. So what I do is, you need a car. What kind of car? You want to buy a Mercedes? Well, I've dealt with Star Motors. I think last year they sold about 7 Mercedes because of our relationship. Why? Because they take care of my clients. And that, to me, it's always putting the pieces. So you may say, okay, Ed says, Milan, I need windows. No problem. I've got a client, Marlboro window. We'll bring them in. So somebody just asked me this week, they want to redo their basement, make it into a duplex. Milan, who do you know? One of the guys yesterday at our office, he goes, who the heck don't you know? Yeah. Well, if I don't know them, I'll find out about them.
This is excellent points. But for our listeners, especially for people who are just getting into sales, how do you make yourself more than just a sales guy, more than just a sales rep? Because very often, again, like this is my product, like I sell phones, this is it. But how do you position yourself that you are more than just like that particular product? You're not associated with it. Was there like a transition period for you when you realized the power of it? How did this happen for you?
It wasn't done as a plan, I must say. I wrote a book called Beyond the Tipping Point, how to get you to build relationships and make them work for you. There's a million books about networking. People think it's backslapping, passing a bunch of... No, it's not that. I gave a presentation to the University of Ottawa football team, 100 players after practice in the gallery, and I'm talking to them about networking, and they're looking at me going, are you out of your friggin' mind? Yeah. Who do I know? And I said to them, okay, there are 100 players in this auditorium. Do you know each one? There's your network. So the idea, the stronger the network is, the stronger you are. But you're not using the network for personal purposes. During COVID, I just helped 2 clients. It was a share purchase. I brought in one lawyer. I brought in the other lawyer. I brought the accountant. So the idea is, what else can you do? The world has changed in sales. If you're an accountant and all you do is bean counting, that's not enough anymore. Yeah. Not enough. So as a salesperson, you teach yourself, okay, here's my core business. And of course, I have to do that. However, what else? If somebody says to you, I need to get something. Well, you go, wait a minute. Who do I know that can supply that? Everybody wins. Yeah. So during COVID, I've had so many clients introduce this client in construction to this lawyer that's opening up an office to put them together. That's not something that you say, okay, I'm going to definitely, for me, it's natural.
Yes, such a good point and important to keep in mind because we're all interconnected and interdependent. And I think COVID-19 actually put a very good focus on this because people now want to talk more than ever before. And before that, in the sales world, we're always looking for that reason, like, what's the reason for my call? Why are you calling me? Right now, you don't need that reason because people just like, are you okay? Is there anything I can do? What else can you do better as a human being than just ask that simple question?
Absolutely. When COVID started, people will tell you, you email me now, you're going to get an email answer within minutes, usually. If I'm not with a client, quick. So what I did is I contacted my people that I knew, my centers of influence. It's amazing because they had the time. I re-strengthened relationships over COVID, where I'm talking to a certain lawyer for 45 minutes. We've known each other for 30 years. We're talking about everything. Next thing he says, hey, by the way, I'm transferring to this firm. I'm definitely going to use your services. You go, okay, I didn't ask you, but hey, great. And some people just sat on their hands thinking it's going to pass. It's not passing. It didn't pass in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months. It's still here. So I always encourage people to say, pick up the phone and do you need anything? Genuinely. Don't BS. Do you need anything? Who do you want to know? Oh, you want to know that guy? Hold on. Let me make a call. I'm known for that.
Yeah, no, such a beautiful advice. So that's the power of the connection of the network and the value. Then all of a sudden they don't see you just as another vendor.
And they can tell it's genuine. They can tell. There's no alternate motive. The motive is, how can I help you? And you know what? I don't just give a name. In regular times, my book talks about this. If I'm introducing you to somebody, I'm with you. I'm with you at that meeting. So that make the connection stronger, and then people can take it over from there. But even now, like if I introduce you to somebody via email, I'll call back. I'll call that person and say, by the way, this Ed guy's calling you. This is what he's about. He's going to call you about this. Please take his call. It's worth your time.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's a lot of great stories. Speaking of which, what type of stories excite your customers, excite your connectors? Give us something good. What excites people now?
What excites people is, for me, as a result of all that I've done, the podcast, a brand new opportunity come because the client said, This individual, young man, said, I watched you the last couple of years. I need somebody to put the pieces together. So here's something exciting. Our client says to me, Milan, I want you to do my estate plan. So I said, okay, who's your accountant? Who's your lawyer? So he gives me both. He goes, I need another lawyer. So I have a lawyer in town that we worked with. He's a great communicator. For this to work, you have to have good team players and no egos. Put your ego aside. Mm-hmm. So we end up restructuring 4 meetings. We had a US franchise, Canada franchise, reorganization. And a number of years later, the client sells his business for multi-millions. I think they probably saved about $8 million of tax. Does that juice me? Friggin' right.
Yeah.
What also excites me is when somebody says, oh, you know what? I've been told I can't get insurance. Really? Really? Are you kidding me? And we come back, sure, here's $2.5 million. Here's $24 million. We've done these, and not all my clients are huge. My clients are strictly corporate professional. That's all. Could be a mid-sized firm, and the clients are busy. That excites me. Also telling the client, no, don't do this. Mm-hmm. I've had clients come to me and say, I want to buy this policy. It's $300 and some odd thousand a year. And I said, no. And they go, what do you mean no? My friend did it in Toronto. Why did my friend in Toronto buy it? I said, because he has a better salesman.
Yeah.
It's a fact. I said to him, for you, it doesn't make sense. And here's the reasons why. I spent an hour and a half at the Rideau Club doing this. I'll do it over again. So to me, these are the stories because you can really provide insight. And for me, because I am a trust and estate practitioner, you can check my designations out, but I actually work in it. So it's not like I have a letter behind my name. So when I talk to a client, the client says to me, oh, by the way, my one child's got this condition. I said, you probably have a Hanson Trust. Yeah. I'm sure she's thinking, what the hell? This guy's not a lawyer. Yeah. But to me, I don't want to be a lawyer. You want a Hanson Trust? I'll bring you to the person that can schedule it. So in sales, go above what you actually provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting toward the end of our interview, and it's been wonderful. Last question. What kind of challenges do you see facing today's business leaders? Because you work with them on a daily basis. Obviously, COVID-19, but overall, what challenges do you see facing business community and especially leaders, business owners and such?
Well, if you're in business today and your product can be bought from Amazon, that's a challenge. Mm-hmm. That's a real challenge. So you may own a Canadian Tire store, you may own this store. What really gets to me is when I'm going to these stores, because I believe in buy local. Little hardware store, I'll go see them in Rockland rather than somewhere else. Okay? What kills me at some of these stores, you walk in and they'll say, oh, why don't you go on the web? Yeah. And I'm thinking, if I go on the web, what's the point of you being here? You're out of a job. Yeah. So the challenge for business owners is, first of all, lead your team, create a vision, and create a mission, and create that atmosphere. Whatever the client requires, give them prompt service. So that's a challenge for a business owner because you're dealing with cash flow. You're dealing with this. You're dealing with this. You're dealing with employee issues. Sometimes the whole world gets muddled up. So the challenge as business owners during COVID, get out, talk to your clients, talk to your clients, talk to your clients, talk to your clients some more. Because those people will provide business opportunities for you.
I love it. So for our listeners, how can they connect with you? And what's the best way to learn about your book?
The book is on Amazon. It's called Beyond the Tipping Point. It's an easy read. I didn't write the book to make money. I was asked to go on tour. You can create your own family office atmosphere just through this book. Best way to reach me is either through TK or Inner Orbis. The phone number is 613-728-7030, extension 223. TK Financial or Inner Orbis. Inner Orbis, my son Nick came up with this idea. It's a circle. Mm-hmm. In Latin, it's a circle.
Again, we're all connected, right?
That's right. So Ed, let's say I have a client who needs coaching, and you've already coached some of my clients. I already know that, okay? So the idea is we're all sitting in the circle. The client is in the middle. He or she is the most important. Focus on them.
Great. Again, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming to the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That does it for this episode of Storytelling for Sales. You'll find show notes and links on our webpage, storytellingsales.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.